It's that time again. Time to review the books I picked for Shelve It or Shove It, the completely superficial game where I pick books for my TBR based solely on their covers. I am your hostess with the mostest, Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Every 6 months, I review the 6 books I picked during Shelve It or Shove It. And if you haven't seen Shelve It or Shove It, I look at book covers for new releases in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and pick my favorite cover and then read the book. And that's not all. I also choose the ugliest cover over that 6-month period and read that book as well. So that's 7 books in total. If you haven't seen how I review books, a book is simply either blessed, meaning I recommend it, or I zap it, meaning I don't recommend it. So without further ado, let's start with the month of July. In July, I picked The Phoenix Pencil Company by Allison King because I was drawn to this bright yellow cover. I love the flowers made of pencil shavings, these little pencil nubs along the side. And I found out this is a historical fantasy split between 2 time periods, the present day, where we focus on Monica Say, who has sacrificed her education to help take care of her grandparents, especially her grandmother Yoon, who is slowly losing her memory. The other time period is when the grandmother Yoon is a young girl during the Chinese Revolution, where her family fled to Taiwan and her family ran the Phoenix Pencil Company. Now, the speculative element comes from the ability of Yoon and her mother to extract the writing from pencil nubs that have been used, that they created. It's an interesting concept, though there didn't really seem to be a compelling reason for this power of pencil magic. The story probably could have been written without it, but I did enjoy the historical story of Yoon. What I did not enjoy was Monica's story. I didn't find her a very likable or sympathetic character, and half the book was her story about this burgeoning lesbian romance. Honestly, I just got bored after a while. I pushed my way to the halfway point, but as many of you know, I'm not really into stories where romance is a large part of the plot. And I don't mind romances like a little subplot, but this was a lot, and I felt like I was forcing myself to keep reading, so eventually I DNF'd the Phoenix Pencil Company. So of course, it gets a zap. Now, I'm probably in the minority on this one, and I can see why people like this book. And hey, it was a Reese's Book Club pick, so take that for what you will. In August, I picked Infinite Archive by Muir Lafferty, the third mid-solar murder mystery, and the third time I picked one of these books for Shelve It or Shove It, because look at the cover. The color blocking and this retro feel always gets me, but this time there were cats. So you know I had to get it, and it did not disappoint. If you don't know, this is a science fiction cozy mystery where the detective, Mallory Viridian, has this preternatural ability to be around murders and also to solve them. And you need to read the first book, Station Eternity, to find out more about Mallory's strange ability, but you don't have to read the first book because each of the mid-solar murders are standalone mysteries. Mallory tries to stay away from humans because she keeps getting drawn into murders around them, so she's hiding out in this alien space station. But humans are coming, and this time they're bringing with them the internet, along with a mystery writers convention. Mallory's also a mystery writer. And also, In another visitation comes Queen Tina, the rock alien with the heart of gold and the brain of a child. And we've met her in 2 of the previous books, and this time she's visiting in hijinks and, of course, murders ensue. This is a light, breezy book, not as good as the other 2, in my opinion. And I want to call false advertising to the picture of cats on the cover, because while there are cats in the story, there needed to be more. This is a fun series, which I've been recommending since the first book, and I'm not stopping now. Yes, Infinite Archive gets my blessing. In September, I picked Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. I love this cover with the apple, and foliage in the shape of a snake, and T. Kingfisher is one of my favorite authors, which may have swayed my decision a little bit. I figured it was another of Kingfisher's fairy tale retellings, and I thought it may have been an obscure fairy tale like the retelling of the Goose Girl in A Sorceress Comes to Call. But no, this is a very familiar tale, which you can tell from the apple. Yes, I'm talking about Snow White. T. Kingfisher always finds an unexpected angle to approach a fairy tale, even one as overdone as Snow White, and somehow make it fresh. In Hemlock and Silver, the focus is on the magic mirror, the silver, and the silver mirrors are imported from the land of the king's first wife. The main character, however, is none that you're familiar with. It's a new character. Her name is Anja, and she is an expert in poisons. And she uses her expertise to heal people who may have been poisoned, and the king thinks his daughter Snow has been poisoned because she's wasting away and no other healer has been able to help her. So Anja is recruited to be Snow's new healer. Little does Anja realize that the silver mirrors throughout the castle may reflect more than just a reflection. Once again, T. Kingfisher knocks it out of the park. I love the story. 5 out of 5. Of course, Hemlock and Silver gets my blessing. In October, I picked up Alchemised by SenLinYu. And that's all one word, kind of like Cher or Madonna. Anyway, the gothic illustrated cover with the dim, dreary colors was really striking, especially since the only pop of color was this tiny little figure in a red robe that's entering the castle. Let me cut to the chase on this one. I DNF'd it a third of the way through. Not because of the writing. The writing was really engaging. Not because of the pacing. The pacing really moved me along as a reader. But I DNF'd this puppy because I just hated the story where I thought the story was going. The story is about a woman named Helena who was finally freed from some sort of suspended animation where she was conscious when she was supposed to be asleep. She's a prisoner of the evil high necromancer who has overthrown the kingdom where Helena was once a healer. At least she thinks so because she has lost a lot of her memories. But she could hold secrets that the high necromancer needs, so she is given to the High Reeve, another ruthless necromancer, to extract her memories. And the way this is described, forcing his way into her mind, is kind of like a violation, if you know what I mean. The High Reeve is, of course, handsome, but also very aloof. He's married to a very nasty woman, and he goes about his duty somewhat mechanically. Well, the more I read, the more it became apparent to me that Helena was having feelings for her torturer, the High Reeve. And then it goes forward, and the High Necromancer thinks that she needs to be pregnant to produce more children with these abilities. And the High Reeve must do his duty, but he doesn't seem to like having sex with her. In fact, he vomits afterwards. It's almost like they're both the High Reeve and Helena are getting raped. And I realized, Okay, this is going to be a love story between Helena and the High Reeve. And when I finished part 1, we got to part 2, which is like half the book, and it's an extended flashback. And I thought I could see how this was being shaped. I just knew, and I could be wrong, and if you've read the story, please correct me, but I knew this was going to be a situation where opposites attract, and the High Reeve and Helena fall in love, but then something happens where she knows she's going to have to go into suspended animation. The High Reeve knows he's going to have to play some type of role, and Helena will give permission for him to do whatever he has to do, including this sort of violation of her in order to win the High Necromancer's trust, so eventually they can overcome him. I'm pretty sure that must be how this is going to be laid out, but I'm just not here for that type of story. I think it must end in either one of two ways. Either Helena forgives the High Reeve for all this torture and they live happily ever after they defeat the High Necromancer, or she can't get over what he did to her and rejects him ultimately, so it's more of a tragedy. But I think this is a romance, so we're going to get a happily ever after. I am curious of how it's going to end, but I'm not that curious enough to read it. This is like a 1,000-page book. Now, when I looked deeper into this story, I found out some interesting things. One was SenLinYu got a 7-figure movie deal for Alchemised, which is kind of amazing for a debut. Another interesting thing of note is that this started out as Harry Potter fan fiction between Hermione and Draco Malfoy. But again, for me, falling in love with your torturer, no matter how it's justified, is a pass for me. Sorry, not sorry, but Alchemised by SenLinYu gets that. In November, I picked Tantrum by Rachel Eve Moulton from the horror section because the cover was so charming and disturbing. A perambulator with tentacles. Rosemary's Baby meets Lovecraft. I was very excited for this one. It's about Thea, a mother of 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. She recently gave birth to the girl, Lucia, and she's convinced there's something evil about Lucia. Now, the novel has a nice start, but we quickly got diverted into this long discourse into Thea's past. We barely even see Lucia, the evil baby girl, in the first half of the book. It's all about Thea, and for me, Thea was not a very likable main character. And if there's an unlikable main character, for me, there needs to be something else there to keep me reading or keep me interested. Like if I don't like the character, but she has a vicious sense of humor or macabre outlook on the world, twisted look on the world. No, Thea just kind of whines and whines and whines, and I didn't like her at all. We figure out there's something about Thea's own childhood. She has a horrible relationship with her own mother, but then I'm like, please don't let Thea's issue be related to childhood sexual abuse. I mean, I come across this so often, it's almost a cliche, and I don't like reading about it, but guess what? Thea's issues are exactly what I was hoping it wouldn't be: childhood sexual abuse. Now, I almost DNF'd this one, but it's a short book, and I was kind of curious about the daughter, so I finished the book, and the last half goes into this wild wacko land, and not in a good way. It's so over the top weird that I kept wondering, is this some sort of big dream sequence, or is this actually happening? There's no laws of physics or physiology. Any sort of logic just gets discarded and tossed away. Okay, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, but I think I need to illustrate the type of thing I'm talking about. At one point, Lucia, the baby, eats her mother, Thea, devours her mother, Thea. So Thea goes into the baby's stomach, and the baby is like pregnant with her own mother. There's nothing wrong with Thea. She's perfectly fine living in her baby's stomach. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. I really disliked it quite a bit. So it should come as no surprise that Tantrum by Rachel Eve Moulton gets a zap. In December, I picked another cover from the horror section. Play Nice by Rachel Harrison. I love this whimsical, creepy cover, this purple Victorian house with a demonic tail around it. That really called to me. So the story is about Cleo, the youngest of 3 daughters of a woman who wrote an infamous book about living in a haunted house. Now, when the mother dies, she leaves said house to her daughters, and Cleo, who is an influencer, wants to renovate the house and document the process for content. Now, I found Cleo to be really likable. It was a joy to read about Cleo and how she approaches life. Now, mind you, Cleo is extremely flawed. She's selfish, self-absorbed. Sometimes she's a little bit mean, but she's also funny and witty. And this is the type of character I love to read as a main character. She has a very complicated relationship with her 2 older sisters. Her father coddles her, and something has gone wrong in the past. Something is up. And no, it is not sexual abuse. Thank you, book gods. But she did have a very unconventional childhood because her mother was convinced that their house was haunted. Now, Cleo has little memory of her childhood because she was very young. Her older sisters do have more of a memory. And as she's renovating the house, she thinks her mother might have been right. It really might be possessed. I haven't read a horror novel from an author that I'm not familiar with that I liked for quite some time, so I was extremely psyched to find this book holding my attention through all the family drama that was uncovered. Play Nice by Rachel Harrison definitely gets my blessing. Now, the only thing that disappointed me was that the haunted house was not a purple Victorian. It wasn't even a Victorian, but a split-level track house. Talk about false advertising. Okay, for our Ugly Duckling book cover contest, the ugliest book cover of the last 6 months, choosing the winner was really quite easy. It was Sunbirth by SenLinYu. The harsh colors of lemon yellow and electric blue, the amateur Photoshop, the childish font. This is one of the ugliest covers I've ever come across. Now, I don't know why. Maybe someone can explain it to me in the comments, but whenever I see a cover like this, it's almost always literary science fiction. Again, I don't know why. Maybe the uglier the cover, the more literary the prose is. I don't get it. But I braced myself for a literary science fiction experience, and spoiler alert, that's exactly what I got. Also, this is the only book that I got from the library, which is unusual because I like supporting authors and almost always buy their ebooks for Shelve It or Shove It. For whatever reason, the publisher priced the book for like $25. It was more expensive than the hardcover for some reason. I've looked it up again. I think they lowered it for a few dollars. But $25 for an ebook is just too much, I think. Anyway, the story is told in the first person. We never know her name, but it's this woman who runs a local pharmacy in the village of 5 Poems. You never know her name, but she does have a sister who works across town named Dongji. One of her customers is Miss Pan, a very rich, pregnant woman. And by the way, the world is ending. Yes, this is a dying Earth novel. The sun is slowly disappearing. A sliver of the sun seems to vanish every couple weeks. And if you can't figure it out, this is the opposite of hard science fiction. The world does not follow the laws of physics or astrophysics. It's almost like a waking dream. It's also more character-driven than plot-driven. Do not read this novel for the plot. Now, as the sun slowly disappears, every so often, someone's head combusts and turns into this bright little sun. And they're usually not like enlightened. They're sort of the opposite. They're kind of nasty people that turn into these little sun heads. And it's very surreal and weird. And I loved this book. Sometimes these literary novels turn out to be gems. Sometimes not. Sometimes I can't stand reading them. But this book worked for me, but I know it's not for everyone. You almost have to disengage your mind from normal stories just to experience this type of tale. The closest type of book I can think of is Dahlgren by Samuel R. Delany, which is the Ulysses of the science fiction genre. Dahlgren is a sort of slice of life experiment in a city that exists outside of time. Dahlgren is one of my favorite novels. I did not go into this book thinking I'd like it. Just the opposite. But it turned out I absolutely loved it. It's one of those books, for me, that evokes this introspective meditation on relationships between people, whether they're family or just acquaintances, and the relationship with places. Again, I know this type of book is not for everyone. It's been compared to Murakami, so that may give you an idea of how it reads. For me, this book was a home run. Sunbirth by SenLinYu gets my blessing. I hope this book wins all the awards, or at least gets nominated for awards, because that's probably the only way it's going to get any recognition, because it ain't getting it through the cover. So, of the 7 books chosen just by their cover, including the ugliest cover, I chose 3 fantasy, 2 science fiction, and 2 horror. And of those, I zapped 3 of them, and of those 3, I DNF'd 2. That means I blessed 4 books. That's not a great track record for Shelve It or Shove It, but hey, it could have been worse. But I want to know what you think. Have you read any of these books? Do you agree or disagree with me? Do you want to read any of these books? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. How will next year stack up? We shall have to wait and see. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.